I recently made this router template, and as usual, while I was working on the project, I thought of a better way to do it, and I'll be showing that in this video. I'm starting with the bars, and they need a slot, and there are two ways to make these. The simpler way would be to use solid wood and then just cut the slot in, and the other way is how I'm doing it here. I'm going to cut thin strips and glue those together so that they have the slot in the middle. One downside is that it takes longer, but the upside is that you use less material and you don't have to route a slot, which I don't like doing. The hole that I'm drilling here is for the head of a screw that'll fit in there. I had kind of an interesting idea on how to put this together so that I wouldn't have to drill a hole straight into the end of these bars. And it starts with this hole, and then I can cut a slot that connects that hole to the end. I'll do that on the table saw with my mini table saw sled. And then I need to flatten the head on that screw so that it fits inside that 1/4 inch space. And the flat spots also help to keep it from turning while you're tightening it up. Now I got all the parts cut out for the bars and I can start putting it together. I'm using polyurethane construction adhesive, and that works for the steel screw as well. I let the glue dry overnight. Now I can scrape off the squeeze out and run it through the table saw to clean up the sides. Now I'm going to be using this template with a 3/4 inch bit in my trim router. I want to get that put in. And what I need to do, because the base of my trim router is rectangular, is I need to mark the width of the wings that the base will sit on so that I can cut them to the correct width. I'll start with the narrow one, and I need to cut 2 of those, and then I'll do the wider one, and I need 2 of those as well. I don't quite have enough plywood for 2 of those though, so I'm going to be using up some smaller scrap. Here I'm measuring the overhang so that I can mark the offset on the end of the bar. That's how much it needs to stick out so that it will sit on the other wing. And then I can get the bars glued to the wings, and here you can see that offset sticking off the front. One thing to look out for is to make sure that these are all oriented the same way. I let the glue dry, and then I trimmed off the ends, and now I can get a clamp down to my workbench and trim off the edge of the wing so that it's flush with the cutting edge of the 3/4 inch router bit that I have in the trim router. Another thing about the rectangular base on my trim router is that the offset is not exactly the same on all 4 sides, so this is why I need to mark the orientation. I'll mark it on the bar of the jig, and I'll also mark it on the router itself. And then I only need to mark the first 2. This is kind of optional, but I figured I would add a little bit of reinforcement to the wing that is not all in one piece, that I made up from scraps. I'm going to cut a recess for a spline and then glue the spline in. And it just so happens that I have a thin strip of walnut that's almost exactly the right size. And then after the glue dried on that, I can get that trimmed off as well. I'm adding these blocks on the ends of the bars to give a little bit more support. And now I can put it together for the first time, and you can see how it works. It's just that screw sticking out with a washer and a wing nut to lock it in place. And now I can try it for the first time as well on a scrap of plywood. The sawdust kind of gets hung up in here, and really there's no avoiding that. So you would do a rough pass and then clean out the dust, and then do a second pass to finish the cut. Say you need to cut a recess for something that's a certain size, you can size this template to fit around it, and then route the pocket that it fits in. You can also line this up with marks that are on the piece that you need to cut a recess into. But of course, the easiest way to line this up would be to have rulers on there so that you can set it according to the measurements. These are just ones that I printed myself, and I'm using a glue stick to stick them on there.